G'day there guys, who would have guessed that it's your main man Markee, back at it again with another episode of r/legal advice. Now if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe and join my amazing community. With that out of the way, I'd love for you guys to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn on the barbie, and get ready for some good content, without cliffhangers, or avoiding them as much as possible. And our first post, Georgia, just found out husband fabricated entire life. Can I get an annulment, and how do I get him out? I met my husband 4 years ago, just before moving from PA to Georgia. Shortly after my move, he followed me, and we fell in love. We lived together from 2015 onwards, and in mid-November 2018, we married. Today I discovered that virtually everything he has ever told me or demonstrated about his life was a complete fabrication. From specific medical issues to jobs past and present, to education, to family relationships, to the claim that his first language was not English, to phone conversations that never happens to people he knows to. If you can think it, he has lied about it. We live together, but the name is on the lease and I hold the title on both of our cars. He has some belongings in our home, but most of it has been purchased with money that I have earned over our 4 years together, plus money from my personal savings accounts. I am totally open to letting him walk with all of his stuff, and even signing the older car to him. After a quick internet search, it looks like I might have the grounds for annulment of my marriage, on the basis of being seriously misled. Do I? What will I need to be able to prove in order to make it work? And is there anything else I need to keep in mind to aim for an annulment instead of a divorce? He is mentally ill, though quite differently than I was led to believe, and received SSDI each month, but that is nowhere near enough for him to live on. What is the legal way to get him out of my house and my life with minimal risk, damage, and cost to me? Also, do I look for a divorce lawyer in this situation? Sorry if that's a dumb question. And also, how does custody of pets work? We have 2 kittens we got in July, and I can't imagine separating them. I also can't imagine being able to take care of them once we're separated, but I don't know if that matters. My Irish curse says, you should definitely consult an attorney. In Georgia, you can get an annulment for fraud. It definitely sounds like fraud, because he put so much effort into lying. However, you have to prove that it was more than just lies, but lies intended to trick you to marry him. A lawyer knows how to present those facts to the court. Mental illness is also grounds for an annulment, but it has to be such that he could not consent to the marriage. Again, a lawyer can help with that. Another big issue for a lawyer is limiting your financial risk. You don't want to pay this guy alimony or lose property to him, so a lawyer can help prevent that. Update. Just found out my husband fabricated entire life, because I know you guys love updates. Edit, this post got more attention than I expected, and awards I didn't even know existed. Thanks, kind strangers. A few notes for the curious amongst you. For more specifics on the things he lied about, there's a partial list here. Oh my god, I just looked at it. That list is so long. I'm gonna read that whole thing now. It's gonna take me a few minutes. If you're not interested in this stupid crap that he lied about, skip ahead a few minutes. But this is insane. I've had a bunch of questions about what specifically the man in question lied about. Here's a partial list. Partial, main words. That he went to school in Britain, met his ex-wife there, and lived there for about 20 years before returning to the US. That he went to the bank and tried to close our joint account, but couldn't do it because he wasn't an authorized signer on the account. Full list of emergency medical information, including doctors' names and phone numbers, and lists of medications that he wasn't on. Jesus! Why? That his grown kids stole about $2,000 from him and kicked him out of his own house. That just sounds ridiculous. That he'd managed to scrape together enough money to buy a house, but then his property tax increased, and he ended up losing the house in a totally unfair turn of events. Turns out he'd so egregiously messed up his family's finances that his ex-wife ended up losing the home she grew up in. Oh, that is scummy! That his father had abused him horribly as a kid, and that his mom had stood by and let it happen. That's something that's terrible to lie about, Jesus. that his aunt and uncle were the only relatives who really cared for him, and his uncle had died suddenly of a heart attack, right before we really got serious. Uncle is still alive and well, by the way. It's a really weird one to lie about. That he'd been in Berlin when the wall came down. That he was harassed at the grocery store by some random lady that didn't like the way he looked. God, that's all of us when we're shopping and Karen's kid comes up to us. That he grew up speaking Polish as a first language. That he walked and talked in his sleep, in his first language Polish, as a side effect of the medication that he wasn't on. What? That his dad was a woodworker and was making furniture for us. That his brother worked at DARPA. That his aunt was a nun. That a nurse at the hospital had told him some things about my dad's case that we needed to attend to. That he had a specific job with a host of people that he worked with on a regular basis. And all the stories he told me on a nearly daily basis about those people. That is insanity. How does he actually make up stories like that? What? That his boss had bought him the fancy new watch he had on his wrist. That Mr. Park, the camera repair guy, did work on his cameras for free or at a discount. Countless lies about money spent or refunds unavailable for all kinds of reasons. Alright, I'm not going to keep going, this list is insanely long. I'll just put up a screenshot of all the rest in a big list here. You can pause it and look at it if you'd like. Just some noteworthy ones. That he'd met the Queen. That he'd been commissioned to make artwork for Harry and Meghan, and a special concierge for the Queen had come for tea to pick it up. That he had medical insurance. Oh, that's a big no-no, buddy. You don't lie about that in America. Even that story of that woman who was getting her face eaten by a bear. I just saw a headline when it was happening. She's like, oh God, how much is my medical insurance gonna cost? That some FBI agents had interviewed him because Trump. Oof, this last one hits close to home. That he loved me. Ooh. Ow, I'm sorry, OP. That hits way too close to home. Alright, with that out of the way, follow this link for a comprehensive evidence that cats make the internet go round. It's a much better link to go with after that last one. Oh my God. The best advice I can give for those stuck in an abusive or otherwise horrible relationship is this. 1. No matter what you think now, it will be better if you get out. 2. Find people who will give you the kind of advice you'd give someone if roles were reversed. Then do what they tell you that you should do. 3. When you're ready to process everything, find a therapist to help you through it. And 4, as well as you can, act in ways that will allow you to look yourself in the eye when it's over, because that will matter, and also it will help you in the long run. There is a disturbing number of people out there who have lived through things like this and much worse. Please be kind to one another, support those who need it, and refuse to tolerate the poor treatment of others. Alright, any of you guys experience someone lying like that to the point where you need a divorce? I'm so curious to hear these stories. This is a new phenomenon to me. As well as the fact that pufferfish toxin can kill you and people get high off of it, but that's another case entirely. Now back to the original post. The original post is linked in this post. It's been a little bit over a year since I turned to this community, as my life fell rather dramatically to pieces around me. My original post didn't get a ton of attention, but the replies I received helped me tremendously, and seeing where I am a year later may also provide some hope for those going through their own crisis. In particular, you helped me construct my initial list of immediate to-do items, and put me on the right track to figure out how to extricate myself from the relationship. The day I first posted here was the day I found out my then husband had lied and fabricated most of what I knew about him. Other things that I did that day included teaching a class to 200 undergrads about 15 minutes after I found out for sure, and kicking off a day-and-a-half long job interview for the next stage in my career, a job which I somehow landed. What unfolded over the following 3 months can only be described as living my way through my own version of a Lifetime movie. At some point, I moved into an extended stay hotel, and as time passed, I learned about the depths and breadths of the lies and deceit he'd used to both control me and get what he wanted, and the lengths that he'd go to try and get his grip back on what he'd successfully manipulated his way through for about 4 years. What I know now, and what I'm kind of glad I didn't really know then, was that I wasn't actually as safe with him as I thought I was. So I'm thankful that I managed to get out with only psychological, emotional, and financial burden, and no physical trauma. About 2.5 months later, I successfully had my marriage annulled on the basis of fraudulent coercion to marry. I ended up doing the necessary research and filing the paperwork myself, which was not an easy task, but was both cheaper and faster than it was going to be if I hired a lawyer. A few weeks after the annulment, I moved my belongings out of the apartment and moved to a new city and my new job, without him, but with the kittens. As of late June, I finally had him convinced that contacting me was pointless because he wasn't getting me back, and so I've been largely free to recover from the trauma and crisis mode I lived in for about 3 months. One thing I've always learned from all of this is how incredibly difficult it is to get out of a relationship in a situation like this. Besides the obvious difficulty of navigating the legal system and the cost associated with it, there's the cognitive dissonance of constantly trying to remember to relate to that other person in light of the new information you've found out about them. It really and truly took every life skill and tremendous support of my family and friends network to get out in more or less one piece. And even still, the road to recovery and a return to a thriving is a long one. So thanks to those who helped me back on that terrible day in January 2019. And if you know someone who is going through something like this, please offer whatever you can in support, because they definitely need it. Man, that is a loaded story, and I really hope she's okay. That is a lot of lies to find yourself living in with a man like that. That list is insanity. Anyway guys, here, as with everything, there is no way but forward, and on to our next story. By harassment assistance, Spectrum Cable refuses to stop sending sales reps to my door after multiple contacts to the company, as well as calling the sheriff's office twice. I am being told they can send new reps each time because each criminal trespassing notice only applies to the one person, not the business. What the hell? I live in Maine. I severed ties with Spectrum when I moved. I continued to receive mail to my attention, and filled out the form on their website in early 2019 to remove myself from their mailing list. Mail finally ceased, but they began to send their employees to my door. I told the first 2 who arrived together they were not welcome, and that just because I asked the company to remove me from the mailing list does not mean I instead want them to come to my door. They were upset with my telling them this, but left. I work from home and make phone calls, and they cause my dog to start barking, so this interrupts my work. I presume contact would stop. A few weeks later, another rep shows up. I told him I'd already been advised his company that their reps are not welcome, and he is now trespassing. The rep stated, "Yeah, I know, but that wasn't me." He emphasized the me part of that, which told me the company was aware I told the reps to leave, but planned to swap out reps and send new ones. Sounds like a weird episode of Black Mirror where they're like, "I'm Mr. Meeseeks, you can't get rid of me." Anyway, I called my local sheriff, and the deputy told me that he could not go to Spectrum himself and serve them any sort of notice, as he could do with individuals. He said he would recommend I reach out to the company further. I contacted Spectrum's chat, no corporate number available, and was escalated to a manager. And I informed them that I have repeatedly told their agents to leave, and any further agents they send are violating 17A MRS Weird Sign 402, and are trespassing. I advised her I work from home and of the disruption. She verified my address and assured me that I was removed from further contacts. I saved screenshots of the chat. Yesterday, another Spectrum agent arrived knocking at my door. I opened the door, took a picture of him, walked out, and took a picture of his license plates, and called the sheriff, and asked a deputy to arrive to explain to this rep that his business cannot continue to do this. He arrived, took down the name and date of birth of the rep, and said he can only issue criminal trespass notices to each rep. The Spectrum rep's manager called him and said he would be there. The agent asked for my number so the manager could call me, and I provided it to him. I advised the deputy he can meet with the manager, but if he doesn't feel I need to be around, I'm going back to work. He did, so I could see from the window, and I believed it resolved. I received a call from the manager, which I thought would be apologetic. It was not. He advised me that since the house is a rental, if he takes it off the list for service, these are not service calls, they're sales, then no other tenants in the future could have service. I advised him that is not true, because those tenants could simply call Spectrum and change the status, since both he and the agent have told me this is a toggleable feature in their system. He said he would not do that, and I said that I hear him implying I have no rights as this tenant, and that the landlord needs to contact him. But he is not explicitly stating that. He is just stating he will not remove me from marketing because he wants to continue in spite of being told they are not welcome. He advised me he did not feel the call was productive at that point. At no point did I swear or curse, and I advised him at this point that he is pushing me to a lawsuit. He said to go ahead and file my lawsuit. I told him that is never something a manager should tell a customer, and he said, yeah, hearsay buddy, and disconnected. I am awestruck at this point. I have done everything I can think of, and Spectrum has acknowledged the impact to my work, has acknowledged my multiple reports to the authorities, and because of the apparent unprofessional culture of their sales managers, they're going to continue to harass me at my residence. Can anyone with a knowledge of a person's rights in this sort of situation in Maine give me any advice? I have no idea what to do at this point to avoid the continued harassment and trespassing. So, there's a pretty good comment thread here. Spectrum is regulated by a city and/or county and/or state body, commonly some sort of public utility commission. File a complaint with their regulatory body, including the police paper trail and the details of the phone call. They say, this is not something I've heard of previously. That looks like it may be Maine Public Utilities Commission. I will reach out to them tomorrow morning and inquire about the process of filing a complaint. Thanks for the reply. Not a lawyer, but work for a public utility company. We take the PSC, Public Service Commission complaints, very seriously, because the PSC affects the rate we can charge customers. As a public utility, we can't just pick a rate out of thin air. We have to show the rate is reasonable based on expenses, future projects, etc., and the PSC is part of the rate case we have periodically. If we get a PSC complaint, we have to detail steps we have taken to resolve the complaints to the best of our ability to the PSC representative. If they don't believe we have taken the proper steps, they can use the case against us when we bring our rate case. I'm not sure if Maine PSC works similarly, but if it does, this is one of your best options. Make a PSC complaint and then make future complaints each time this happens. Reference previous complaints each time. Alright, tell me what you guys think about that post. And now we move on to our final, no cliffhanger post with an update for all you lily-livered lovers out there. This one's titled, My ex has a restraining order against me and now lives in the same apartment complex. My ex-wife and I had a rocky marriage. My alcoholism didn't help, she pushed for a divorce. We lived together during this divorce, and one day I found out she was dating another man. I snapped and hit her pretty hard. I was charged with assault, spent 3 months in jail, went to anger management, and I was also issued a 3-year restraining order. This was 2 years ago. I have since sobered up, met a wonderful woman, and moved to a completely different apartment complex in a completely different part of the city, and never had any further contact with my ex-wife. I admit what I did was wrong. I paid the price, and I have since re-established myself. My current woman, who I've been in a relationship for 2 years, is aware of this background story, which makes things slightly easier. Well, unknown to me, my ex moved into my apartment complex about 5 months ago, with her now new husband, who had always lived here. I did not know this. I saw her in the lobby just before New Year's. She greeted me. I turned shocked and said hello. She asked me what I was doing in the lobby. I said I was just coming in from work. She told me that the restraining order is still in effect and I need to move out. I tried to reason with her and told her I'd be happy to steer clear of her. I know we don't live on the same floor. I don't even know what floor she lives on. I don't care to know. I told her if I saw her on an elevator, I wouldn't get in and just wait for the next one. She told me she was going to enforce the restraining order against me. My partner and I literally just signed a brand new 2-year lease 6 months ago. We love the place we live in and wouldn't want to move. and it just feels unjust having to move/incur financial hardship because the person I had a restraining order against had moved into my apartment complex. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because last night building management was informed of the restraining order and told us we need to figure this out. Would she really be able to force me out of my home even though I lived here before her? As long as I do my best to avoid any contact with her, which I'm perfectly fine doing, shouldn't that be sufficient? I work a really early schedule, and the fact that she was dating this guy and coming over to his apartment complex the entire time I've been here, and we ran cross paths. And she's been living here full time for 5 months and just recently crossed paths. Not sure what to do. FYI, this is New York City. So MTest24 says, I'm not a criminal attorney, but you have some good factors in your favor. You have abided by the order of the protection for a long time. 2 years in fact, without incident. You have sobered up and been through counseling. Judges want to hear that stuff. The best practical advice I can give you is that you should take the lead here. Get an attorney and get yourself back in front of the judge. Tell the judge your story first. If you wait and she drags you into court, you may be viewed with suspicion because, as others have noted, you're technically in violation of the protection order right now. An attorney in your area will undoubtedly know more about what to ask for, but if you take the lead, the judge will probably be more sympathetic to your cause. Ask for the time of the order to be shortened out of existence, hopefully, or that the parameters be redefined so that you can live in the same complex, but that you agree to not have purposeful contact with her. Bottom line, get out in front of this. Now, let's see what they did about it. His name's I'm a Better Man, by the way, which is a lot better than the one in the TIFU episode about the doctor and the butt. Didn't like that one. Anyway, an update on my ex has a restraining order against me and now lives in the same apartment complex. The public defender that represented me was no longer practicing in the NYC area, but I retained a lawyer who was a friend of a friend who had experience in this area. My lawyer got references from my PO, employer, and AA sponsor. Our goal was to get the restraining order modified to a simple no-contact order with no distance requirement, so I could continue living with my partner. I spoke to the judge, told him my story, what I had done to correct my past transgressions. He reviewed my record, we submitted our references. During this time period, I was crashing on a friend's couch as to not violate my protective order. PO said I had paid my fines, followed all the rules, and never once had to remind me of my restrictions, and so forth, and said he was impressed with my turnaround. My employer said I was always early, never seemed to be under the influence or hangover from anything, and even at our company functions was very open and honest about my sobriety and didn't partake in drinking. My Alcoholic Anonymous sponsor said good things about me too, how he was impressed with my maturity and openness on my alcoholism and addiction. Then the judge asked my ex-wife to speak. My ex-wife said she was shocked by my turnaround. She said that it seemed unfair for her to require me to move because she moved into my building unknowingly, and that she no longer felt threatened by me. This was a shock to both my lawyer and I, as I expected my ex to want to keep her protective order in place. The judge said that he wouldn't modify the protective order, but lift it entirely as he felt it had served its purpose, and that based upon my references, my testimony, and most importantly the testimony of my ex, that he didn't see how keeping it in place was benefiting anyone. He did tell my ex that if she ever felt threatened or in danger because of something I said or did, she could contact the police. The judge then told me his main reason for lifting the order was to allow me to live in my current apartment, but advised it was a good idea to contact my ex to avoid any potential complications down the road. He reminded me because of my past, it wouldn't take much to get another protective order put in place. I told the judge I had no intention of talking/contacting my ex, and I was thrilled that I don't have to move and get to stay with my current girlfriend. So over the course of the weekend, I moved back into my apartment with my girlfriend. I'm glad this was resolved. God damn, that was a mouthful, but I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I really like that update, and if Ripe has covered this story already, god damn it, I hope I gave a better twist on it. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode today. Tell me what you think of r/LegalAdvice. I actually really loved reading this one out, and I'm trying to improve with you guys and your suggestions. Anyway, this is 25 minutes now, so I really hope you guys didn't fall asleep to my lovely velvet Australian voice. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode, guys. Have a good one. Bye.